If a one-bedroom comes available in Spokane, it's picked up in seconds. The list is so long for those one-bedroom units. Like I said, it's going to take 3-4 years sometimes for folks to even get into a unit.
Spokane County is in the throes of a housing crisis that's creating a new homeless crisis. Among the families of the hidden homeless, several significant causes of homelessness are related to this housing crisis. The first is the unavailability of rentals, even for people with money and a good rental history. You can't just say, go and find a cheaper place, because there aren't any.
Housing right now for families is very hard. Low-income housing is very, very hard, especially one-bedroom units right now. The vacancy rate for one-bedroom units is like at a 0.3, if I'm not mistaken. So it's super, super hard for folks to find one-bedroom units. So we do have a lot of folks who are just kind of milling around and waiting for available units because we can't find any one-bedroom units. We've got folks who have rapid rehousing through our agency or another agency, or they have HIN housing, or they have Section 8 housing, or other housing options, and they have their golden ticket to housing, but we can't get them into any housing because we can't find a one-bedroom.
So the availability of rental housing in Spokane County is extremely limited for everyone, but especially for low-income families. The vacancy rate in Spokane is basically zero. It's at functional zero, which means that it's less than 1%.
The second cause of homelessness directly related to the current housing crisis is rent increases. Over the past 7 years, rents in the Spokane area have increased 50%.
One of the things that we're seeing the most of now are rent increases. And rent increases to a tenant, if the rent increase is higher than 10%, 15%, a rent increase of that amount can be the same as getting a notice to move or an eviction notice. I often say a rent increase and an eviction notice there's very little difference. Just last week, I talked with an individual who called because his mother was paying $800 a month rent, and she just got a notice this week that the rent will be going up to $1,200. That's extremely high. That's a 50% increase, but it's not unusual.
My income, along with the rent is taking 70% of my income basically, and that's unheard of, and it wasn't like that a few years ago. I basically was living in a place that I rented, an apartment, for around 7 years. And I was a really good renter. I paid when I needed to. I was never late paying. And come to find out later that I would be, get a 20-day notice to leave. 20 days is not a lot of time to find a new place to rent. Considering everywhere is raising the rent so high. When my rent was like $650, and now everywhere nowadays wants $700, $800, $900, up to $1,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment. People like me with a disadvantage of having low income, they might be forced to move out of Spokane when we've been here forever, and I find that very sad. What happened to me, I didn't find a lot of resources, and it was really too close to call to being homeless.
According to the Washington State Department of Commerce, national research shows a connection between rent increases and homelessness. A $100 increase in rents is associated with an increase in homelessness of between 6 and 32%. Simply put, there's an identifiable relationship between rising rental rates and rising homelessness. To expect rental rates to dramatically rise while expecting rates of homelessness to dramatically fall is a fool's errand. And this brings us to the third housing crisis related cause of homelessness: a bad rental or personal history, including things like bad credit or having an eviction or a felony on your record.
Struggles that I see for families that are trying to get into housing, that would be if you have an eviction on your record, you're going to work 100 times more to get into permanent housing. If you have a felony on your record, that's a huge barrier as well. If you have any type of landlord debt, you're going to have a hard time finding housing. And so even though there's not much available out there to someone who doesn't have those issues that they're up against. Just think about the people who have the felonies, the evictions, the landlord debt. It's even harder for them to find someone willing to rent to them.
According to the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance, the rising rents and eviction are the two leading causes of homelessness right now in the state of Washington. We see that exact trend here in Spokane. And when many tenants don't even wait to get evicted because we have no cause notices to vacate, and they know they can't defend themselves, so they'll just move. I call those self-evictions because they just know they don't want to get an eviction initiated that would soil their record, so they move, whether they have somewhere to go to or not.
There's obviously a limited amount of resources and housing to put homeless families in. We're building quite a bit of new homeless family housing. The reality is in our Spokane community, we have about 50,000 people living at or below the federal poverty line. It means there's 50,000 people who are one broken down car, one unexpected medical bill, one lost shift at work away from becoming homeless and going into that spiral. The majority of people who are homeless in our community are not homeless because of addiction or mental health. They're homeless because of the housing crisis in our community. They're homeless because they're getting squeezed out of affordable housing and they simply have nowhere else to go.
So Spokane Housing Authority really believes that housing is the foundation that you have to have in order to work through any other issues that are going on. Without that foundation, you're stuck. You have to have that foundation in order to move forward. That's crucial, it's critical, it has to happen. We need to make housing available to people in order to help them deal with anything else that's going on in their world.
So in my opinion, with landlords being able to evict with no cause, I think that hurts the tenants' rights, and it gives the landlords basically power and to wield anything they want to do. And what does that leave the tenants with? Nothing. You know, it totally takes advantage of the tenants.
I think the best way that we can prevent homelessness is to protect people in the homes that they're living in already. It makes no sense that when we have a homelessness situation like we do in Spokane, that we make it so easy for a tenant to lose their home. No reason, no cause, 20 days. It seems to me we should be able to fix that.